There is a conversation happening in strategic analysis centers around the world, in universities, in the military headquarters of dozens of countries, a conversation that does not appear in mainstream media, but that is, quite possibly, the most important one being had right now about the long-term consequences of the war in the Gulf. And that conversation concerns a lesson the entire world is drawing from what is happening to Iran. The lesson is this: if you have the capability to develop nuclear weapons, develop them before you are attacked. Because if you do, no one attacks you. This conclusion is uncomfortable. It is politically impossible to articulate in international forums. It contradicts decades of diplomatic effort around the Non-Proliferation Treaty. It goes against every argument that Western governments have used for generations to justify their pressure policies on countries seeking nuclear capability. But it is, in light of what is happening, the only conclusion that honest analysis permits. Let us look at the data coldly. North Korea has nuclear weapons. No one invades North Korea. The sanctions, the diplomatic pressure, the international isolation, all of it exists. But no one launches a military operation against Pyongyang because the consequences would be apocalyptic. Kim Jong-un's regime is, from any ethical and political perspective, far more repressive than the Iranian government. It violates human rights on a scale that has no comparison in the modern world, and yet it survives, precisely because it has the weapon that makes attacking it impossible. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. India has nuclear weapons. Israel has nuclear weapons. None of those countries is a party to the Non-Proliferation Treaty or has consistently complied with it. And none of them faces regime change military campaigns from the United States. The logic that emerges from that comparison is crushing in its clarity. The nuclear weapon is the only real guarantor of regime survival against American power. Iran made a different decision. It negotiated. It signed the 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA, which limited its enrichment program in exchange for sanctions relief and international recognition. It bet that diplomacy was a viable path, that commitments had value, that if it demonstrated good faith, other actors would demonstrate it too. That bet went badly wrong in the worst possible way. The United States unilaterally withdrew from the agreement in 2018 under Trump, reimposing sanctions. And on February 28th of this year, despite decades of diplomacy and negotiation, the attack came anyway. The most honest strategists in the world, including some who have no sympathy whatsoever for the Iranian regime, are reaching the conclusion that Iran made a historic error by not following North Korea's path. That moderation and willingness to negotiate did not produce security, they produced vulnerability, and that the only path that guaranteed the survival of the Iranian state, regardless of who governed it, was becoming a nuclear power before the attack arrived. This conclusion has consequences that go far beyond Iran, because dozens of countries around the world are watching what is happening to Iran and drawing their own conclusions. And the conclusion they are drawing is not that they should renounce nuclear capability. The conclusion they are drawing is that if they don't have it, they are vulnerable, that the Non-Proliferation Treaty is an instrument that protects the powerful and leaves the weak unprotected, that the international non-proliferation system works in the wrong direction. It convinces countries without nuclear capability to renounce it, while those that already have it do not reduce theirs. Japan is watching, South Korea is watching, Saudi Arabia is watching, Turkey is watching, Poland is watching. All of them are drawing the same conclusion, with variations of nuance depending on their geographic situation and current alliances. And that conclusion is the greatest strategic gift this war gives to nuclear proliferation worldwide. The architects of the campaign against Iran argued that one of its primary objectives was to eliminate the possibility of Iran developing nuclear weapons. The bitter irony is that they are producing exactly the opposite result. They are generating the most powerful incentives that have existed in decades for Iran and dozens of other countries to seek nuclear capability as soon as possible. When this war ends, regardless of how it ends, whatever leaders emerge in Iran will have one absolutely clear conclusion about what failed in their country's strategy. It was not the resistance that failed. It was not the conventional military capability that failed. What failed was the absence of the ultimate deterrence, and they will act accordingly. Iran's nuclear program, which this war aimed to destroy, will emerge from this conflict with more popular support, more strategic justification, and more urgency than ever before. Because the argument made by those within Iran who have defended nuclearization for years was completely validated by events. They were right, and the world knows it. There is an additional dimension to this analysis that deserves specific attention: the relationship between Iran's nuclear program and regional actors. Saudi Arabia already had, before February 28th, a strategic agreement with Pakistan that included nuclear security commitments. Riyadh was actively seeking its own uranium enrichment capability, a capability Washington had denied for years as a condition for civilian nuclear cooperation. That refusal was always fragile. Now, with what it is witnessing, with the vulnerability it perceives, Saudi Arabia is going to accelerate its pursuit of independent nuclear capability or alternative nuclear alliances. Turkey, under Erdogan, has been explicit in its resentment of the fact that countries like Israel or Pakistan have nuclear weapons, while Turkey, a NATO member, does not. That conversation is going to intensify, and Turkey has the industrial and technological capacity to develop a nuclear program if it decides to do so. What we are witnessing, then, is not only the failure of a specific military campaign against Iran. We are witnessing the beginning of the practical dismantling of the global nuclear non-proliferation regime, accelerated by the decision to attack a country that had chosen to comply with that regime. The Non-Proliferation Treaty was always an imperfect agreement. The nuclear powers committed to advancing toward disarmament. The non-nuclear countries committed not to develop the weapon. Neither side fully complied, but the system worked well enough to prevent massive proliferation for decades. That is changing now. And the change is, in large part, a consequence of what is happening to Iran. There will be those who argue that this justifies precisely the position of those who wanted to strike the Iranian nuclear program before it advanced further, that if Iran had reached the point of having the weapon, the calculus would be far more dangerous. This argument has some logic in the theoretical plane, but it ignores what it is producing on the practical plane. The demonstration that renouncing nuclear capability makes you vulnerable, and that the only safe way to avoid being attacked is to have it. We are not saying this is the desirable outcome. We are saying it is the probable one. And the difference between the desirable and the probable is the distance between foreign policy as it should be and foreign policy as it is. The architects of the non-proliferation order that emerged from the Cold War believed it was possible to build a system of international norms robust enough to make the nuclearization of new actors unnecessary. That project always depended on something fundamental: that the world believed the system protected everyone, that respecting the norms produced security, that conventional deterrents and alliances were sufficient. What is happening in the Persian Gulf destroys that belief in a fundamental way. It demonstrates that the norms protect those who already have the weapon and leave unprotected those who do not. That international commitments can be ignored when they are convenient for the powerful. That the only deterrence that works is the one that makes the cost of an attack absolutely unacceptable. Iran understood it too late, but the rest of the world is taking note right now. And that note-taking is one of the most enduring and most dangerous legacies of this war.